Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your unfiltered fit BFF. Mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who truly understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify your fitness journey so you can lose fat, regain your confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Come on, let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host, and I want to start today's episode asking you a question. That's how we're going to start today, because I want you to think about this for a second while I give somebody a shout out, and then we go straight into today's conversation. And this question that I'm going to ask is very aligned with what we're going to be talking about. How many times have you, let's say that you meet somebody who is very much into fitness, is a fitness expert. And the first question is like, hey, what is the best time to work out? What should I be doing to get rid of like these love handles? What is best to do cardio before or after my weightlifting session? What is the best anti-inflammatory food? How many times have you asked from somebody who you perceive to be an expert in nutrition, fitness, about what is the optimum and what is the hack and what is the best strategy? I want you to think about this for a second. And then we're going to come back to this because this is very much what we will be peeling the layers on today on what is best. What are the things that are best for you? What are the things that you should be focusing on? All right. But before we do that, I want to give a huge shout out to someone who sent me a message on Instagram, and I'm very grateful. And I want to give her a shout out. Her name is Sherry. And here's the message that Sherry sent me. I wanted to mention that I really appreciate your content as well as your podcast. I have found so many of them have given me inspiration and great information. I have listened to many episodes multiple times. Thank you for that. I hope you have the best day. Well, Sherry, you made my day. And I wanted to give you a shout out here in the podcast because I really appreciate, I actually was doing a podcast. I'm going to go on a tangent, so stay with me here for a second. I was actually recording a podcast today. Very cool podcast. I don't think I can disclose yet, but I was talking with the host, and she's a doctor. That's all you need to know. She's a doctor. And I was talking to her today, and she's had her podcast for 5 years, over 5 years. And she asked how long I've had my podcast for. And I told her that in the beginning, whenever I started the podcast, I felt very discouraged to continue, especially in the very beginning. Like I'm talking about the first 5 or 6 episodes, because there weren't a lot of listeners and there weren't a lot of people that were, consuming the content and most importantly, implementing it. So I felt like I wasn't helping anybody by just talking to a microphone. And as I stuck with it and as I kept on getting messages and our members in the Powerhouse Academy saying, oh my goodness, Nathalia, I listened to that and it really helped me with X, Y, and Z. That really lit a fire on me to just keep on going. And because we were talking about how there are so many podcast graveyards on the Apple podcast platform, on Spotify and things like that, because people don't continue. And for me, it was actually the opposite. In the beginning, the very beginning, that's when I felt a bit discouraged to continue because I couldn't see it making an impact. And then now I am so invested in creating the content and making sure that I'm bringing solid information to you guys because it really fills my cup to know that the things that I'm saying here, you guys are listening, you guys are implementing, and most importantly, it is helping you. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I feel incredibly grateful that you are choosing to take some time to listen to just good old me here talking in a microphone and sharing my thoughts, my experience. So thank you for that. And your way of letting me know that you think that this is informative, this is helpful, is by sending me a message on Instagram, by leaving a review. Leaving a review is like mwah, chef's kiss, because then it allows other people to be like, "Ooh, I should be stopping here." You know, so the more reviews we have, the more feedback that we have, the more other people are going to look and know that the conversations that we're having in this podcast are relevant, are important, and are life changing. So if you could give me an extra, I don't know, like 30 minutes, 2 minutes of your time to leave that review, that would be amazing. If not, just sharing it with a friend or just sending me a message to tell me, that is good too. I appreciate you. Now back to today's episode. And before I start going to my getting on my soapbox about the topic today, I want to tell a story. And if you have been here for some time, you might have heard the story. It was a long time ago, so I don't remember the exact details, but it stays with me until this day because it was kind of when I start to have epiphanies and come to Jesus moment about the importance of focusing on simplicity. Because I had this trainer that came to me and he was like, Nathalia, I would love your input on this. And I'm like, cool, tell me what's up. And then he goes, well, I have this client and I'm carb cycling her, but I'm wondering if I should be carb cycling her like 50, 120, like, and he starts like throwing all these numbers that I, like, quite honestly, I had no idea what the fuck he was talking about because he threw so many numbers by number like 4, he had already lost me. And I'm just looking at him and nodding and I'm like, okay. And he's like, so what do you think? Like, how do you think I should split her carb cycling? And I'm like, right. What is her goal? And he's like, oh, she just wants to lose like fat and build a little bit of muscle. And I'm like, okay. Is she like, does she have kids? Does she work? Oh, yeah, she works full time. And yeah, she has kids. She's super busy. And that's one of the biggest challenges is that because of her career, she always has to go to restaurants and then it makes it very difficult and it's a bit overwhelming for her with the carb cycling and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And with what you're doing right now with the carb cycling, how the way that you're doing it, how is it going? Oh yeah, she hasn't been able to lose any weight because I'm struggling with compliance with her. Like she won't follow it. And I'm like, okay. And how much is she eating? Yeah, that's the problem. She's like, she should be eating about 1700 calories in order to lose weight. But she's like, last time that we looked at it, it was way over 2000 calories. And I'm like, right. So I started laughing and I was like, why are you worried about carb cycling and doing all the bells and whistles and optimizing the timing in which she's going to have her most carbohydrate rich meal if she is on a caloric surplus, given that she's not losing, she's actually gaining, and that her lifestyle is making it very difficult for her to stay consistent with a strategy that is quite advanced for anybody. She's not going to step on stage. She's just trying to, go, I don't know, from a size 10 to a size 6. And then he's like, yeah, right. But like, maybe if I change the carbs and, one day is 50. And that is when he clicked. A lot of people don't understand that this isn't about fine tuning the minutia, because he like the way I look at it, he was trying to slap lipstick in a pig. What is the pig? The pig is like she wasn't eating the amount that he wanted her to eat. She wasn't in a caloric deficit. She was clearly non-compliant. But hey, let's try to optimize. You're slapping lipstick in a pig, but it's still a pig. Trying to optimize shit, it's still gonna give you shit. And that's what I see so many times in the fitness space, that we're trying to optimize things, we're trying to work things at a high level when the fundamentals have not been addressed. I had a friend the other day ask about the best anti-inflammatory foods. Oh no, Natalia, what are the best anti-inflammatory foods for me to eat? Because I think I have some inflammation on my joints and, and I have brain fog. But this is someone who is significantly overweight. You open her social media and she's getting shit faced every single weekend. And she's trying to ask me about the best anti-inflammatory foods because her joints are inflamed. The most inflammatory thing that there is excess fat. One of the most problematic things for joint, especially, your hip, like your hip, your knees, your ankles and stuff like that, is to be carrying a significant amount of extra weight. I mean, I'm all about having a little glass of wine, but if you're getting trashed every single weekend and you're trying to ask me about the best anti-inflammatory foods, you're focusing on the thing that is not really going to move the needle that much, which is then going to make you feel frustrated because you're going to feel you're going out this extra mile to move the needle on something that has very little impact on the bigger picture. Focusing on reducing your caloric intake so you can lose some weight, take that pressure out of your joints, and potentially maybe, instead of getting Wigro wasted every single weekend, I mean, how about we reduce that to one weekend and then eventually no weekends? So, but can you see what I'm trying to say with trying to focus on optimizing when the foundation is not there? I used an analogy with somebody the other day that was like, you're trying to figure out what the handles of the cabinets, the custom cabinets of your office are going to be when you have not even figured out what is the best foundation for the house that you're yet to build. But you're already thinking about the handles. Maybe the handles are important, or maybe by the time the house is built, you don't even want an office anymore. And using your energy right now to try and figure out what the best handles and pulls and whatever, gold or silver or bronze or whatever the hell it is. What if by the time the house is ready, you don't even want to have an office anymore? You just wasted all that energy focusing on something that is not going to get you the best bang for your buck right now. That's something that I see a lot in the fitness space because, again, and this is, I know that I sound a bit like a broken record, but to get attention on social media and in the landscape where everybody is just word vomiting all the time, people are getting more and more outrageous and more focusing on the comma of a study that may or may not have an impact, but there is no the evidence, but there is a small 0.1 possibility. And then people are like, and this was confirmed. Because that's what makes headlines, outrageous claims and complicated stuff and novelty and the bells and whistles. That is what drives eyeballs. But the problem with that is that it is overwhelming most people, and people are already incredibly overwhelmed with all the information that is available right now. And then they are spending more time, like the audience, the people who are trying to consume all this extra bells and whistles. Oh, because I have to maximize the time in which I have to drink a liter and a quarter of water the second I wake up. But then he has to have some lemon because it's going to cleanse. But then after that, you have like a croissant and you go to Starbucks and then you get the whatever macchiato with extra whipped cream and 55 things. And listen, I ain't judging. But if we're going to do all the extra stuff for optimizing, but the foundation is not addressed, that lemon ain't going to do anything. That water, the second you wake up, is not going to change anything. And then people are spending all this time planning the plan to plan the execution of the first plan and then scheduling an appointment to plan the plan, that by the time it comes time to do the damn thing, they're exhausted already because they're confused. There's so many plans and there was so much energy and time used to plan the plan, to show up, to plan what time you're going to show up, to schedule an appointment, to revise the plan, to then do what you got to do, that by the time you get there, you ran out of steam. You're like, oh my goodness me, I'm exhausted, because it gives you that feeling that you're doing so much, but what you're doing, you're just procrastinating action by constantly obsessing on the optimal way of doing things. And one thing that I have learned in my 15 years as a coach, 26 years, oh goodness me, which, for some of you guys listening, might be more time than y'all have been alive, which makes me feel a bit ancient, but I digress. But, I've been lifting for 26 years. I've been involved in the fitness space for 26 years. I've been a coach for 15 years. And after helping over 5,000 women, what I see time and time again is that very few people, if any, quite honestly, need the level of optimization that they think they do. Need to pay attention to the details and to like the comma and instead of focusing on the letters and the phrases and how everything comes together. And I created a list for you about 10 things that I have seen people obsess about optimizing, that quite honestly, they either have very, 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 very little impact on someone's progress, or just absolutely do not matter. And that's the thing that I find it upsetting for me as a fitness professional, as a mother, as someone who enjoys fitness, is that I know that time is limited for us. You ain't nobody just sitting there and be like, oh yeah, I have all time in the world. The one of the biggest reasons why people struggle to take action is because they are limited in time. But then they spend all this time and all this energy planning the plan, to plan the execution of the plan that they have planned, that whenever it comes, they're tapped out. They're ready for a nap. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, is that a lot of times the planning for a trip makes you exhausted. By the time the trip comes, you've been planning so much and like organizing that you're tapped out. You're like, oh my goodness, am I like, I experience that all the time. I have like decision fatigue from the planning. And then I have to schedule, like me and my husband have to plan a meeting, to plan the trip, to plan what time we're going to plan to leave. By the time we get there, it's like, but obviously whenever it comes to like trips and stuff like that, you kind of need to plan, because if you don't plan to get in a plane, you cannot just show up in the airport, which it's a bit different with fitness, that you just have to have a level of structure that you can stay consistent with, instead of constantly obsessing with the optimal way of doing things. The optimal way of doing things is the way that you can stay consistent with. So here are the 10 things that I see most people obsessing about that have very little impact or no impact at all. And the number one is, what is the best fat burning zone for cardio? And honestly, this is coming from someone that's been a fitness professional for 15 years. I don't even know what the fuck that means. Because whenever it comes to, and listen, I could sit here and read a whole bunch of word vomit about what fat burning zones are and give you the fancy wording of it. But the truth is that in order for fat to be burned, it isn't going to come from maintaining your heart rate at that specific range if you then go home and eat for a family of 25. That's not how this works. So whenever we're talking about fat burning, the best way that you can fat burn is by not constantly adding to the fat that you already have, which that's going to happen by controlling your caloric intake and building muscle. So the idea that by keeping your heart rate at that specific range, it cannot be one more heartbeat than the other, from actual like fat loss standpoint, it is dumb. And it's quite honestly the amount of time that I tried reading. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to understand. I don't even know what the fuck they were talking about because you have fat zone, like zone 1 and then zone 2. And I'm like, what? Like, what? You just go there, you train, you push yourself hard, make sure that you're executing the movements correctly. You control your caloric intake with lean protein. That is how you are going to be able to lose fat. It isn't going to be by obsessing over every single heartbeat that you have to make sure that you are not on zone 2 and transferring to zone 3. Because y'all, I can't stop it. And I see this a lot in bootcamp classes and things like that. And listen, I love me a good bootcamp class. I love a little bit of the novelty of it, but this is not optimizing anything. This is novelty. It's not going to give you better results. It's not going to there's nothing optimal that is going to make your results better by obsessing over like the fat burning zone if you go home and you stuff your face. So let's stop obsessing about that in the best, the most optimal fat burning zone. The number 2, we are going to have a little bit of a beef on this. And guys, this might be a bit of a longer episode because we have 10 and I can see that I have a lot to rant about for each one of them. I'm going to try to restrain myself. But number 2, oh my goodness, we're still number 2. But number 2 is long mobility routines. And here's the thing. I am not saying that mobility is not important. It is important for you to have mobility. But what I'm saying is that I see this often. Somebody that, for example, only has, 30 minutes to work out 3 times a week, and they want to spend 15 minutes on a mobility routine. That is not optimal use of your time. Quite honestly, that is a waste of time. In fact, there is just a research that came out this year in 2024 that foam rolling and stretching does not provide superior acute flexibility and stiffness improvement compared to any other warm-up intervention. So basically, the benefit of mobility routine is to get your body warm, which you can do that by walking on a treadmill, by wearing a hoodie, and like getting your body temperature higher quicker. I am not saying that like some kind of like stretching is important, but if you're short on time, the best way for you to increase your flexibility and stretching, you can do that as you're doing warm-up sets for your strength routine. If you have extra time and you want to implement some mobility stuff, by all means, knock yourself out. But it is not an optimal, effective use of your time when the benefit from it is basically just raising your core strength. And from like a flexibility standpoint, the benefit of stretching is you're already doing a lot of that with your warm-up sets. So the optimal way is not spending 30 minutes. And I see this all the time, like the guy that is like there, like foam rolling his inner legs. And like I do my cardio, I do my workout. I'm halfway through my workout and he's still doing his warm up. If you are short on time, this is not a good, efficient, optimal use of your time. You're not going to be optimizing your performance. In fact, you're going to be wasting precious time that you could be utilizing for something that is going to give you a lot more bang for your buck. That's number 2. Number 3 is obsessing over anti-inflammatory foods, or like that one food that is going to completely transform. It's like that miracle food. One thing that it is important to understand is that no single food in a vacuum is going to be the thing. We can talk about an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, which that includes managing your weight, having a fiber-rich diet, consuming enough protein to maintain lean mass, exercising regularly, having heart health, because you are implementing some kind of cardiovascular activity. These are the best steps that you can take to be not inflamed, whatever you perceived inflamed to be. Because here's the other thing as well. People are always talking about inflammation as if you were kind of like a quote unquote bad thing, which if you're living in a chronic state, if you're always like inflamed and your joints hurt and stuff like that, then yes, that's a problem. But inflammation per se is not bad. What do you think happens after you have a great weightlifting session where you break down muscle tissue, which is the foundation to muscle hypertrophy and building muscle? That's an inflammation response that causes the muscle to grow. So inflammation per se is not a bad thing. So this obsession with anti-inflammatory and like better for my gut, obviously there are foods that are going to be more beneficial for your gut health. However, if you are obsessing over the gut health and anti-inflammatory components of a specific food item, and then it makes it virtually impossible for you to have consistency with whatever it is that you try to do, because the ingredients are something that you either don't enjoy, they're hard to find, they're not easily available, it's a pain in the ass to prepare that food. And then you get so fed up because you're overwhelmed by all these steps that you need to take to do that. And then you're like, you know what? Screw this shit. I'm going to eat pizza and have cake for breakfast. How is that beneficial? How is that a anti-inflammatory lifestyle if you're constantly on that roller coaster? So these are things that we need to take into account as well. The other thing, number 4, that people obsess about optimizing that honestly have very little impact on progress or at all. Next one is meal timing. The whole idea of, oh, there is this anabolic window that if I don't eat at this specific time, it's funny because the researcher, Brad Schoenfeld, and Alan Aragon, if I'm not mistaken, who I really want to have in our podcast, Brad and Alan, but their initial research was that there was an anabolic window, which was something around 30 minutes after your workout. And after that, they did more studies and they have come out and said that the anabolic window isn't really what they thought it was. It's a lot longer than what was initially thought. And people are always thinking, oh, I need to eat at this specific time because if I don't eat at this specific time, and then they're stressing themselves out and making all the plans to plan when they leave and when they come, in addition to what time they have to pick up their kids in school and what time they have to be at work. Am I going to be able to eat at that time? That they throw their hands up in the air and they don't even do it because they're obsessing on this optimization that quite honestly does not make a difference. But it just elevates the barrier of entry. And if it doesn't elevate the barrier of entry to a point that people don't do it, it makes it incredibly challenging to stay consistent with it because it becomes overwhelming. How am I going to tell somebody, we work with a lot of people in healthcare, like a nurse who is working, 12, 13, sometimes 14-hour shifts, that, you know what? You are in an OR with somebody who is a life and death situation, but you know what? If you don't stop to eat every 3 hours, everything is going to be lost. That is not real life. I mean, if you're a bodybuilder, that's your job to eat every few hours. By all means, knock yourself out. But it is not any more beneficial than to have meal consistency. And what I mean by meal consistency is if you commit yourself to having, let's say, 3 meals every single day, staying consistent with that number of meals is much more beneficial than obsessing with meal frequency or meal timing or whatever it is. So what is optimal whenever it comes to meals is to find a frequency that works for you, that works for your life, that works for your routine, that works for your lifestyle. There are suggestions, from a muscle hypertrophy standpoint and muscle protein synthesis standpoint to make sure that you're consuming enough protein per meal. They are going to be better. Like, for example, anywhere between 3 and 4 meals. Anything less than that can start to impact your muscle protein synthesis throughout the day as you're eating. But even from a fat loss standpoint, it doesn't really matter how many meals you have in a day. It's not ideal, but if you're keeping that caloric deficit, I mean, it can be one meal. Is it a good idea to just have that one meal? Probably not, because chances are that you're going to binge and you're going to try to overcompensate, and it's not going to be good for muscle maintenance, muscle retention, especially if you are perimenopausal, menopausal, or postmenopausal. But it is just to show that this obsession with like the perfect timing of the meal, even from an evolutionary standpoint, doesn't make sense. And then we have number 5. I talk about this all the time. I'm going to talk about this until my face turns blue, which is obsessing over the amount of calories that you burn in a workout because your smartwatch told you that you burn that amount of calories. You guys, I love smartwatches. I think they're a great tool, but I think they are making people delusional and crazy and obsessed with a data that is incredibly inaccurate. I did a presentation once talking about this, and the analogy that I used is like, imagine that you have a gauge of a car, all right? A gauge of a gas on a car. If you know that that gauge is inaccurate, and the reason I'm repeating inaccurate time and time again is because there is data to show that smartwatches can be up to 96%, something like that, like around 90%, even up to 100%. But more recent, around the 90%, they can be up to 90% inaccurate. That is a lot. That is a lot of inaccuracy on that data. So imagine that you have the gas gauge of a car, right? And you know that that gauge is inaccurate. Are you going to rely on that to tell you whether your tank is full of gas or empty, or are you going to use other ways to keep track of that gas because you know that the equipment or the tool that you're using to measure that is inaccurate? You'd be crazy talk to rely on that gas gauge if you know that it is inaccurate. Yet, whenever it comes to smartwatches, people are obsessing, I can probably eat a bit extra because my smartwatch told me that my workout was 600 calories. Stop it. Stop it. It's not. You probably didn't burn the 600 calories, and you most definitely did not, quote unquote, earn your extra food. In fact, that's something I talk often here is like the amount of calories that you burn in the time that you are in the gym accounts for very little, like 5% of the total amount of calories that you burn in a day. So thinking that you have like earned or that you have all these extra calories that you can be consuming and, my workout wasn't as good today because my smartwatch said that I just burned X amount of calories. It's not an accurate way to keep track. And also it kind of, I'm a big fan of biofeedback and kind of paying attention to how your body responds to different activities. Whenever you're constantly relying on this outside data, it kind of disconnects you from your body a bit as well. So not a fan. I think it is useless and to an extent quite detrimental to be trying to optimize all the things based on the amount of calories burned that you believe that were burned in a workout because your smartwatch told you so. So we're halfway there, guys, halfway there. Then number 6, the best exercise. Oh, Nathalia, what's the best exercise frequency? This is probably one of the questions I get asked the most. And we have guidelines as per the CDC, and that is just good. But here is my take. Let's say that we are obsessing over the optimum exercise frequency. And let's say that in this imaginary world, the optimal exercise frequency is, let's say, 6 days a week for an hour and a half each day. I'm exaggerating here, but stay with me here. And then you have a woman who works about 70 hours a week, has 2 kids, a husband, a house to take care of, and she sometimes helps with a parent who is ill or an aging parent. Is this an optimal amount of exercise for someone who already has all this on her plate and barely has time to go to the bathroom to be like, you know what? 6 times a week for an hour and a half every day. It's not going to be something that that person is going to be able to be consistent with. And whenever we're talking about this optimal utopia, whenever it comes to exercise frequency, it alienates a lot of people who do not have that kind of time to dedicate. And then they just throw their hands up in there and they're like, you know what? What's the point of me even trying if there is no way I can meet that? And then those people start to fall into a hole and start to go backwards very aggressively because they don't understand that something is always going to be better than nothing. The important thing is to keep the momentum because life is going to life. Life be lifing every single day. So the best exercise frequency is the exercise frequency that works for the life that you have and that you can emphatically look at that number and be like, you know what? I can absolutely commit to that. It is very real for the life that I have right now. And listen, it might be 3 times a week for 20 minutes. I mean, we've had members in the Powerhouse Academy that we started them with 2 times a week for 15 minutes and built it from there. But trying to go for the optimal and best and all the time, and which then is going to lead you feeling like you're failing because you're not able to meet that, and then it's going to make you give up. It doesn't work. There is no absolute magical number. I mean, there are, like I said before, there are recommendations by the CDC for like optimal health. But even if you cannot meet that, which is actually very low, if I'm not mistaken, it's like 3 times a week for 30 minutes. And we're talking, I don't know, medium exertion, which the bar is very low. Let's just put it that way. But let's say that you cannot make the 30 minutes. I don't remember the exact data, so don't quote me on this. And I don't feel like pulling it up right now. And then let's say that you cannot do the 30 minutes. Oh, what's the point? I'm not going to do anything at all because I cannot do the minimum, so I'm not going to do anything. And then you keep on going backwards and farther away from your goal. And then whenever you realize you're so far away from what you've known yourself as, that it makes it even harder to get started. And it just becomes that snowball. So the optimum, the best exercise frequency is the one that works for the life that you have right now. And this might be just a season. The season that you're in right now is that you can just commit, I don't know, 2 times a week for 15 minutes. Is it the best thing ever? Could be better, but it's still significantly better than doing nothing. And it's going to keep the ball rolling. So keep that in mind. Another thing is, supplements. I have so many things to say about supplements because I think supplements are a good tool, great tool. But people are using and are relying on supplements as the whole freaking toolbox. They think that supplements is some kind of miracle. It's like, oh, I'm tired all the time and I'm feeling bloated, so I'm going to buy that supplement. But then all they eat is simple carbs, or they starve themselves for the whole day or for the whole week. And then on the weekend, they eat for a family of 27 because they are in that all or nothing mentality. No supplement is going to make up for poor eating habits. No supplement is going to make up for poor sleep hygiene. No supplement is going to make up for you not lifting weights and making sure that you're eating enough protein. I mean, protein powder might help, but that's about like it. I think that the only supplement that I think would be, incredibly beneficial would be protein powder, because I do know that a lot of people struggle. Is it a must? An absolute? No, because you can still get protein from regular food, from like everyday food. But it does make it a bit easier. But that would be about it. I have my own pre-workout, but a pre-workout is not going to fix and be like, oh, is it like the best pre-workout? The best pre-workout that you can have is to have good sleep hygiene. So whenever you wake up, you're not feeling like you died because you are over committing yourself and you're getting zero sleep. And then you're trying to make up for it with jacking yourself up in pre-workout. That's not how this works. So there is no best supplement if the foundation is not aligned with your goals. Supplements are not miracle pills. The other thing that people are always talking about, optimizing what is best, like full body workout, like the bro split, and what is the best? What is the most optimal? Funnily enough, there has been data that shows that full body workout drives this as good results as, body part splits, or what I like to call bro splits. I do bro split. Why? Because I like it. And because I have carved out time on my schedule to be able to train with the frequency required to be able to do body part splits. But it hasn't always been like this. Whenever I had my kids, I didn't have time to go to the gym with the same frequency that I have now. I didn't have as much of a good routine. I was a new mom, so I was still finding my footing. So what was optimal for me then was to have full body routines with less frequency. So whenever we're talking about what is best, what is more efficient, again, it kind of goes back to the same thing with the exercise frequency. It's going to depend on the frequency that you can go. Because, for example, let's say I personally don't do arms. I quite honestly thinking that exercising arms individually, go like getting your car to go to the gym to do arms, is a waste of time, but you do you, boo. I haven't trained arms in years, but I digress. So let's say that somebody has 3 days a week to go to the gym. And I see this all the time when I go to the gym. And I see that person in one of the only 3 days that they have in the gym to do arms. That is not an optimal use of the little time that you have. So the optimizing is going to be very, we need context to see what is optimal. Because if somebody only has 3 days a week, getting that one day to focus just on arms is not going to be an optimal use of their time. Why? Because arms are going to be smaller muscle groups. They're not going to, give you more bang for your buck. A much better use of your time would be to do, full body split with, for example, a push and pull with more compound movements. Your one day with the push, you're doing your squats, you're doing your leg press, you're doing, your shoulder press. And then on the pull, you're doing your lat pull down, your deadlifts, you know what I'm saying? So it is the best split is going to be the one that is optimal for the season of life that you're in. So obsessing which one is best, which one is optimal is also going to depend on how much time you have. And then the other one is very controversial one, cardio before, after weights. Now, again, we need context here. And I'm going to tell you a fun fact. The data shows that if the goal is body composition, body recomposition, that doing cardio after is slightly better. However, if the goal is you're a runner and you want to be able to have stamina, then doing cardio before is marginally better. But here's another layer of context that we need. Which one do you like most? And which one do you hate most? For example, when I was, for example, getting ready for the Olympia, prepping for the Olympia, on paper, the best time for me to do cardio was after my lifts, my strength training. With that being said, I absolutely hated the cardio that I had to do then. Hate it every second of it. And every single time that I did my lift first and I left my cardio for last, I got myself out of doing the cardio. So I wasn't able to be consistent with it because I despised it so much and I had already done the thing that I liked the most, that I would find something to do, to be busy with, that I would never finish my cardio. So now, whenever we look at it, the paper said that is slightly better. But if it is slightly better on paper, but I'm not doing it, and I know that if I do before, is going to allow me to stay consistent with doing it, which one do you think that is better? The one that is beautiful on paper and optimal and beautiful, but it doesn't get done? Or the one that might not be the best, but it gets done consistently? This is a no-brainer. The one that gets done consistently. So the whole idea of cardio before, cardio after, blah, blah. Do the cardio when you know that you're going to be able to do it consistently, because you are not going to try to run away from it. Most people don't like cardio. To this day, it got me in the habit so much of doing it that I still do my cardio before I lift. Why? Because that's how I like to do it. Is it optimal? I don't know, maybe not. But whenever I don't do it this way, I don't stay consistent with doing it. So we got to pick the poison. And then the last one, number 10, what is the most optimal time of the day to exercise? And this is another one that is I have my bias given the demographic that I work with, but the best time of the day to exercise is going to be the time that you're able to show up consistently. It might not be the time that you absolutely love. And it's like, oh my goodness, we have a lot of members that wake up at like 4:30 in the morning to get their workouts. Is this do you think that they wake up like, whoa, it's amazing. But whenever we suggested the change to first thing in the morning before they get their day going, their consistency increased significantly. Why? Because before they were trying to leave for after work. And then by the time after work came, they were tired. They felt guilty for not spending time with their kids. Something happened. They got called. They had a meeting. They had to stay late at work. There was always something. So if you objectively look at your life, all right, and you're like, more times than not, I have to stay late at work. More times than not, whenever I get home from work, I enjoy spending time with my kids and I feel guilty even if I go to the grocery store because I want to spend time with my kids because I've already been working all day and I haven't really seen them. If consistently you realize that by the time you finish work, you are smoked. And the last thing that you want to do is change clothes, let alone do a workout. The only thing you can think about is taking your bra off and letting the girls hang. Do you really think that that is the best time of the day for you to consistently do your workout? Probably not. Is 4:30 in the morning amazing? Like, oh my goodness, I can't wait. Probably not the best. But whenever we put side by side, 4:30, not great, but I'm going to be able to be consistent with it. Perfect universe, optimal, because I'm going to have already had all the meals and the stars are going to align after work. But it's almost impossible for me to stay consistent with going after work because every single time there is something happening and I feel guilty as shit for not spending time with my kids. And then I don't go. And then your frequency goes from maybe at 4:30 in the morning, you're able to get every single workout. They are not all great because sometimes you're just like, I just want to be in bed, but they're done. And then the other one, you're just able to show up once a week, if that. Which one do you think that is going to drive the best results? Which one do you think is going to be optimal? The one that you're able to be consistent with. So I think that the whole idea of optimization, and like now we have the optimization of fucking water with hydrogen and there's so much overcomplication. Oh, because I need to buy that water because it's going to be the one that is going to like completely save my life. But then you're going to restaurants and eating food that are significantly taking you over your caloric needs for the day. And you're in a chronic state of always being in a caloric surplus. Is that really best? Like, is that hydrogen and water really making a difference? Probably not. But hey, it's novelty. So I really want to encourage you with this episode, especially as we are teetering on the new year. And that's the time where everybody tries to do all the things and do all the researches on the most optimal way to overcome and be and shred and do all the things. I would like you to kind of tune off the noise and bring things back to done versus the best. Because in reality, the best strategy is the done strategy. So, and what is optimal for me might not be optimal for the next person. So that's why fitness is so contextual, because you need to pay attention to your own biofeedback. And by biofeedback, like your body kind of tells you. And again, listening to how your body is reacting and what your body is telling you is just one piece of the puzzle, because there are many mornings that I wake up and my body's telling me to go back to sleep. But it's just because we are adults. That's the difference between adults and children. We are able to analyze our feelings and not just live and act on our feelings. I feel like staying bad, but I know that I have shit to do. I have work to do. I have to get my kids up. I have to get them breakfast. I need to take them to school. So while I encourage you to listen to your body, don't use that as the only gauge to decision making, because letting our lives be dictated by feelings only can also lead us down a slippery slope, because, toddlers let their lives be dictated by feelings and throw tantrums and things like that. That's why they have adults who know how to separate. So let's not act like toddlers and like constantly just going with our feelings, because our feelings sometimes lead us the wrong way. But point being, pay attention and use that as data collection instead of always relying on the optimal fat burning zone, the optimal sleep whatever, or fat burning calories that my smartwatch told. No. What works for you? Okay. I hope this episode has been helpful. Sorry it was a bit longer, but I really wanted to get these 10 things. Maybe I should have done 2 episodes, but no, we're here now. We did it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're having an amazing time this holiday season. I am very grateful for you, and I cannot wait to meet you here again next week. Same bad time, same bad space. Later. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram. Links are down below as well. And let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. This is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.